the more they can say this is a 5-alarm fire, Trump is ready to, do a fire sale of our country. Immediately, you get media scandal and pushback, and the White House has to walk it back.
One of our faves is back. He's a contributing editor at New Lines Magazine and a reporter for The Insider, a Russia-focused media outlet. He's got a Substack called Foreign Office. He's written some books. It's Michael Weiss. What's up, man?
Hey, man. Good to see you.
How's it going? Good to see you, too. Are the birds?
Happy government shutdown.
Yeah,
birds
are the
are
birds
silenced.
with us today?
The birds are silenced. I told Katie, don't worry. It sounds menacing when I say it like that. The birds have been silenced, but no, they're not squawking.
The crows have been silenced. Murder on the dance floor. Happy government shutdown. The TSA situation is getting bleaker and bleaker in New Orleans. I don't know about everywhere else. So we'll see how long it lasts. But
not as bleak as the East Wing of the White House. Jeez.
What'd you think about that? Just a
bit
little
on the nose for symbolism.
Ball?
Yeah, a bit on the nose for symbolism, I'd say.
No.
He said he wasn't going to destroy anything, but there you go. I can't wait to see this ballroom. Christ. It's going to be like the Overlook Hotel.
What is the view from abroad? What do you think the diplomats are thinking about the wrecking ball going through the White House? It's a little ominous.
I mean, yeah, I think they probably would have reckoned it'd be the Russians or the Chinese to do something like that at this stage. The Brits are kind of like probably feeling a slight twinge of jealousy that they don't get to do it again because they were the last ones to do it. And, apparently now we're just giving away real estate to people who speak the language of the metropole. So I guess we can all rejoin the United Kingdom if Donbas is going to Russia, right? Like that, them's the rules. I don't make them. I just repeat them. So maybe it's time to rejoin the United Kingdom.
Nice transition. Speaking of the rules, the state of play in Russia. Trump is so schizophrenic on this. It's kind of hard to. Well, in some ways he's schizophrenic. In other ways, he always lands back at his cozy initial position of beating a Putin file. But I want to read to you yourself the Michael Weiss summary of the state of play. So to get people up to speed in an efficient manner. It was, I guess, earlier last week, Trump dangled tomahawks to Ukraine, tomahawk missiles, which would have been an escalation of our support for Ukraine. Putin then called him, muttered something about Kherson and Zaporizhia to Witkoff. Putin also called to Trump, said he would meet in Budapest. The tomahawks have been undangled. Putin and Witkoff told Trump that the Donbas should be given up, as you just mentioned. Trump asked Zelensky about that. Zelensky said no. Trump backed down. The U.S., EU, UK, and Ukraine all maintained the need for an immediate ceasefire. Russia said no. Rubio and Lavrov's preliminary discussions went nowhere. Their meeting was canceled. Budapest is now a maybe. So there you go.
And that's since Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Like this carousel of kind of hyped and also kind of terrifying nonsense now seems to be sort of slowing down, and we're going back to the initial position, which is nothing has changed policy-wise. False expectations of some dramatic Trump pivot to Ukraine also turned out to be dashed and overly optimistic.
And those expectations were kind of sincere in Europe, though? Is that your sense? Like they thought that Trump was having a temper tantrum and it was going to work out in their favor, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Europeans never miss an opportunity to feel dejected and disillusioned by a man who in the past has told them that he hates them, thinks they're a bunch of freeloaders, and that America is not going to come to their support militarily should they be invaded. Like, I don't know what it would take for the Europeans to kind of get out of this perpetual courtier mode or spiritual guru mode they find themselves in. But, they seem to think he was sincere. The Ukrainians absolutely thought he was sincere. I was talking to a senior Ukrainian intelligence official who said, weeks of preparation went into the Zelensky meeting to come to D.C. It was all about tomahawks, and nobody saw this Putin phone call coming. Nobody except, of course, Steve Witkoff, who I think had every interest in trying to bait Trump with another, possible, magnificent, immediate peace deal. So to put things in perspective, right? We've seen this movie before. This is exactly what happened before the Anchorage summit. Witkoff went to Moscow. He talked to the Russians. He completely misread the Russian position, which was they absolutely want Donbas, but that's kind of a starting point for them. Give us the territory that we have been unable over the course of 10 years, off and on, to capture militarily. Let's get it diplomatically. And then let's have some serious discussions about, the root causes of the war, NATO expansion, demilitarizing Ukraine, regime change, and we want the whole country, but, let's not put it quite like that. And in exchange for that, there was some confusion as to what Witkoff believed the Russians were prepared to do with respect to these two other oblasts, Kherson and Zaporizhia, which Russia does not fully control, controls less of Kherson than it did in the latter part of 2022. And was it a question of Russia withdrawing from places they have occupied in those regions? Or, as it seems more likely now, based on the readout we're getting, were they offering to simply not occupy the parts that they have not occupied and basically give Ukraine territory that Ukraine already controls, right? Like, this is basically what the Russians have dangled. So Witkoff came back and told Trump, they just have to give up Donbas, meaning the Ukrainians, and Putin's prepared to swap some territory. Again, territory that Putin does not control.
Right.
Witkoff, according to Zelensky, said, and this is by way of pressuring the Ukrainians, well, in Donbas, they all speak Russian anyway. And by the way, they speak Russian in Kyiv, too. So I guess there you go. I mean, this is a slippery slope to what the Russians are really up to. And therefore, also, Russia has incorporated Donbas into its constitution. So, like, you can invade a country, take it over militarily, kidnap its children, throw everybody into prison, torture, rape them. And then as long as you write in your constitution, this is ours now, I guess legally, and certainly in the mind of a outer borough real estate developer who's clearly making a fortune doing diplomacy in the Middle East. And no doubt, I would love to see the reporting that is going to come out on what the Russians have offered Steve Witkoff and his crypto kid, right, in exchange for some kind of grand bargain. This is apparently statecraft 101 in the United States now. So the Ukrainians said, absolutely not. You have to understand, Donbas is one of the most militarized places in the world. They have spent a decade turning this into kind of a citadel region, right? Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, if you go back to 2014, 2015, there were pitched battles for the Ukrainians to capture these territories back from the Russian so-called separatists. They're not giving it up. And one of the reasons they're not giving it up is if the Russians take these areas, they become that much closer to taking other areas and basically launching what will be an inevitable attack on Kyiv at some date in the future. So, Zelensky gets into apparently a shouting match with Trump in the White House. Trump says, I don't care, give up Donbass. I'm tired of looking at maps which have places I've never been to and I can't find on maps that I'm tired of looking at. He just kind of gets exasperated. And the Ukrainians say, we're not going to do this. And then Trump backs down, right? Like, the fact that Zelensky told Trump no and Trump accepted it, I feel like is sort of a lead that's been buried in all of this. Like, the Ukrainians, who were famously—
Why do you say that?
Well, because it shows that there's actually limited amounts of pressure and limited leverage that the United States with this president can wield here. He cannot basically put his finger on a button and all of a sudden a region in Europe, home to upwards of 300,000 people on the Ukrainian side, the areas that have not been taken by Russia, will be transferred to somewhere, magical place, internally displaced within Ukraine, or better yet, externally displaced. So another refugee crisis bleeding into Poland, Romania, Hungary, which is supposed to be hosting this summit. I mean, it's magical thinking, right? And the Ukrainians are quite right to say, we cannot do this. So he just kind of, he wilted like a salted snail. And then publicly, and this was interesting, right? If you look at what happened in February, that famous 2 minutes of hate that he and Vance unleashed on Zelensky, it was a public—
Have you said thank you once?
Exactly. It was a public humiliation, public abasement. All of this is transpiring last week privately, as reported by CNN, the FT, and others. Publicly, the press conference was a little bit awkward because tomahawks he essentially ruled out, but at no point did he say publicly they have to give up Donbas. And then when he posted on Truth Social, he did not say they should give up Donbas. Now, this is a man who's not very good at restraining his id or keeping that which he is privately seething about from public viewership. And yet in this case, he didn't really make a big deal about this is what the Ukrainians have to cede. So I'm reading this as, yet again, Donald Trump, in spite of his desperation to be crowned, Prince of Peace, King of America, shit dropper extraordinaire on the No Kings protesters, he actually is, he's getting kind of tired. He's sort of a no energy Trump, to be honest. He's trying to bully the Ukrainians, but he's not doing it with the vim and vigor that he did 8 months ago. And then, the Europeans just completely closed ranks, as is their wont. So they're courtier to Washington, and they're kind of triage surgeons or specialists to Ukraine. They always tell Zelensky, don't worry, we got this. We'll take care of it. We've got your back. And lo and behold, today, it was reported by CNN, Lavrov and Rubio. It's also very interesting that Marco Rubio was running point on this thing instead of Witkoff. The Ukrainians were quite happy to see that as the case. Lavrov and Rubio had a really bad discussion. They were supposed to meet. That meeting is off. And now it is expected that Rubio, again, this is CNN's reporting, will tell Trump not to go to Budapest. So this whole summit may never come to pass. And yet here we are, again, kind of like completely frazzled, stepping out of the halfway house of American insanity, saying, well, wait a minute, we were all expecting Trump to, unleash the tomahawks, and now we're going back to this, he's a Russian asset kind of thing. Well, actually, no, it's just he's trying desperately to force the Ukrainians to do that which they will not and cannot do. And then he climbs down. And the Russian position as of today, as of always, is a maximalist one. No ceasefire along the contact line, right? This is the US, UK, EU, and Ukrainian position, and it has been for months. The Russians continually say, yet. They want to litigate root causes. Putin wants to talk about Ivan the Terrible's land reforms for 3.5 hours before they get into it over a bowl of goulash. I mean, it's all kind of just come to nothing. And, I keep telling people that the greatest kind of asset that Ukraine has, and I'm sorry to put it like this, but the greatest asset they have is that the Russians always shit the bed. Even when they have momentum, even when all Putin has to do is pick up the phone and get Trump on the line and whisper sweet nothings into his ear, and suddenly he is completely, awestruck and infatuated with the Russian claim. He was calling it not even a war, but a special operation, which is just straight up Kremlin propaganda. Even when they've got that going for them, they still can't get what they want fundamentally.
All right, everybody, y'all know I'm grinding out a lot of content here. And I was looking for a product to help give me a little bit of energy in that late afternoon, early evening arena. I don't know about you guys. We eat dinner very early at our house. It's like a blue plate special at the Jameson Miller household. And sometimes after that early dinner, I get a little groggy, and I need something that can give me a pick-me-up for the evening content creation that I'm doing for you all. And we've turned to Mud Water. Mud Water is a coffee alternative made with cacao, chai, turmeric, and functional mushrooms. We love mushrooms like lion's mane and reishi. So you get energy and focus without the wired feeling or midday slump. And if you're more of a matcha person, their matcha starter kit is a total game changer. It's smooth, earthy, and gives you just the right amount of lift without the bitter aftertaste or weird additives a lot of matchas sneak in. To use Mud Water, you simply drop the powder into your favorite mug, pour some water on it, and give it a mix. Some go a little crazy and add creamer, honey, or even CBD. Honey's tasty. I'll throw that out there for you. There's also completely caffeine-free blends available. The best part about Mud Water is it provides sustained energy without the spikes and crash of traditional coffee. Ready to make the switch to cleaner energy? Head to mudwater.com and grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal up to 43% off your entire order, plus free shipping and a free rechargeable frother when you use code THEBulwark. That's right. It's up to 43% off with code THEBulwark at MUDWTR.com. After your purchase, they'll ask you how you found them. Please show your support and let them know we sent you. This really don't hear that much from that Putin call, though. It's like the Zelensky meeting, you have all this readout. And I guess it's because Ukrainians are leaking to the FT, I would assume. People on the Ukrainian side are trying to. And
it's in their interest to do that because the more they can say, this is a 5-alarm fire, Trump is ready to, do a fire sale of our country. Immediately, you get media scandal and pushback, and the White House has to walk it back. And Trump on Air Force One said, I never said that. I'm all about a ceasefire. Great. You've locked him into this position publicly now. Yeah. Right? So that's clever by the Ukrainians to do that.
It is. But we don't exactly know what's happening on the Putin calls, which is always a mystery. And I guess we only know in the sense that Trump gets off the calls and starts sounding like Putin all of a sudden.
Exactly. And that's either, the generous gloss that I can make of that It's not very generous,
Yeah.
but it's
well,
the
it's
best
like
case.
he's always like this about every situation, right? With the
No,
last
it's
person that called him, he starts talking like them.
Well, not quite, but it's he has long had a deep, abiding affinity for Putin. Putin is the kind of authoritarian and strongman that Donald Trump would like to be. Donald Trump is sort of the Timu Putin. Putin has, over the last 20 years,
Timu, like the Chinese
yes,
clothing, down market clothing brand,
down market clothing.
Yeah,
right.
Good, nice. I like that.
Putin can deal with his enemies by harassing them, imprisoning them, or poisoning or assassinating them. He has no political opposition left of which to speak, no viable one anyway. Legislative and judicial checks on his power, give me a break. I mean, those have long been gone, right? I mean, Trump sees in Putin, much as he sees in Xi and to some extent Orban too, a kindred spirit. And Putin is able to somehow have this mesmeric hold over him and tell him, even when Trump has lately been saying both publicly and privately the opposite of what Putin tells him, whatever Putin tells him, he regurgitates. So I'll just give you like a little piece of reporting, which I think is of note. I had a meeting in DC with a US official who I was saying, look, how bad is it? And the line I got was, actually, it's not that bad. It's the war you don't see is the U.S. is still very much involved in Ukraine. This was coming off the back of other FT reporting suggesting that U.S. intel was being shared with the Ukrainians for the purposes of their deep strikes on Russian energy, which has chipped away at the Russian economy, which is a good thing and which is something that Donald Trump avows to want. This is why
I heard Doug Burgum kind of mention this and brag about this the other day. Like there are just these, like little pockets within the administration of still kind of anti-Russia.
Yes, and there's a covert side to things that, for understandable reasons, doesn't get out there. But also, I'd heard that Ratcliffe, en route to Alaska, was sharing credible, realistic intelligence on the battlefield with Trump, showing him that for every square kilometer of terrain the Russians take, they lose X number of hundreds of soldiers. And Trump was getting kind of like almost erect listening to this, because he likes to hear that even countries he's not fond of, like Ukraine, he likes to see these sort of upended expectations. He likes raw demonstrations of power. Yeah. He likes spectacular acts. I said recently, he's not fond of war, but he likes acts of war. This is his shtick, right? I'll bomb Iran and then call it quits, right? I'll kill Qasem Soleimani and call it quits. When the Ukrainians do spiderweb and take out Russian strategic bombers, or when they blow up oil refineries and export terminals, he likes it. He thinks it's cool. Yeah. So that's how they've been playing him. But again, Putin just literally phones it in, has to pick up the phone, and we go back to this sort of starting position.
Just really quick, you mentioned something that piqued my interest earlier about the Witkoff, and obviously Witkoff is just running this huge crypto scam and is involved with the Trump kids and the Witkoff kid. They're all in business together in the Middle East. But you said it was in his interests to, kind of push Trump towards the Russian line here. Like, why did you mean that in an economic sense, or just in a he wants to get a deal done sense?
Well, Trump, I think, is. I mean, if we want to be polite to Trump, I think he's aware that there's not much money to be made from Russia, right? Economic relations between the United States and Russia.
Witkoff could still make a pretty good bag for himself and his family if he wanted to, though.
Witkoff's family and Trump's family could make a lot of money themselves, either through overt deals or things under the table. I mean, this is how the Russians go around, bribing their way in as a form of political warfare. But beyond that, I think it's more. It's this sort of saintly penumbra of peacemaker that he seems to be completely obsessed with, right? He'll tell you he's the most deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize. Why did they give it to this Venezuelan dissident he's never heard of? But, oh, by the way, she was very nice about me. Yeah, right. Oh, and I don't want the Nobel. I mean, he's the easiest mark from a psychological perspective. If you're, you don't have to be a KGB case officer, which Putin was, to know which pressure points to play here, right? And then, indeed, on the call, I would imagine, and Trump even said to some extent, that Putin was just flattering the shit out of him, saying, you have brought peace to the Middle East. You have done that which we have all aspired to do for centuries. And meanwhile, the subsequent tweet or Truth Social post to that, to Trump's readout of his call with Putin, was what? Telling Hamas to knock it off with the execution of Palestinians, because otherwise, the cavalry will roll in. So it looks like peace in our time has been deferred somewhat. And, Witkoff, last I checked, is on a plane with Kushner and Vance to try and put out fires in Israel because this whole deal seems to be deteriorating, if not unraveling. So he's high on his own supply, and he genuinely thinks he can, with the stroke of a pen, just make this all go away. But it's a lot more complicated than that. And he should know that by now, but he's a child. He doesn't, he has an infinite capacity for forgetting what he learned only a week ago.
I want to get to the Israel thing, but just two other little Russian notes. I saw you mention an interview with Alexander Fedotov, a former officer of the FSB, who confirmed that the FSB poisoned Navalny, among some other things. What was it that struck you the most from that from that article?
Well, admitting that they tried to liquidate the leader of the Russian opposition, that's kind of a top line or marquee disclosure coming from he's from the FSB Second Service, which is kind of engaged in domestic surveillance among other things, or the chivying of dissidents, as they did in the former Soviet Union under the KGB. But another interesting disclosure that he made was the referendum in Crimea. Remember, like one of Witkoff's other Kremlin concocted talking points is, well, they had votes and they all wanted to join Russia. Fedotov was saying, actually, no. I mean, the FSB was taking people at gunpoint around, telling them to vote to separate from Ukraine, and also telling them you're going to join Russia one way or another. If you vote yes, great. If you vote no or don't vote at all, your name is going to go on a list. That's not a nice thing, right? So here you have, from the horse's mouth, an FSB operative admitting that there has been no exercise of popular will. There has been no democratic plebiscite anywhere in the occupied territories of Ukraine. It's all being done with Russian coercion, right?
I also liked this. You shared a tweet from one of my favorite Congress people, Anna Paulina Luna, who is a MAGA Luna, if you will. She posted this: "My office just received word from the Russian embassy that the ambassador from Russia to the U.S. will be hand delivering the Russian government's findings on who assassinated JFK to my office."
What a way to give Florida strippers a bad name now, It's like Russian active measures are not, I'm sitting at my computer. I've got a bunch of translated KGB training manuals, which I'm going to bring out on my Substack, and with essays by people who have been studying the Soviet secret services for years. And, you read about all the intricacies and all the kind of elaborate schemes that the Soviets cooked up to snare people, to dupe people, to inveigle and influence people. And now all of this stuff is literally being tweeted in real time. These are the Russian active measures of a subreddit. It's so naked, it's so farcical, it's so absurd. So what happened here? She was earlier talking about how she's going to have a meeting with Kirill Dmitriev, who's the head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and one of the most kind of outspokenly, kind of cartoonishly dancing Russian operatives when it comes to the war in Ukraine. He cannot stop tweeting. And what is he tweeting? He's QAnon posting, right? He's telling Elon Musk we should build a tunnel between Russia and Alaska. He's tagging companies that he's kind of scheming with on the sly, no doubt, not even on the sly anymore. Just out in plain sight. And so he's found this MAGA congresswoman who apparently Donald Trump is quite taken with. No doubt the former stripping bit on the CV played a role in that, but he's quite taken with her. And Dmitriev says, let's have a meeting. And so she tweets out, I'm going to have a meeting with Dmitriev. She gets pushback. She doesn't understand the pushback, and she's telling everybody, "No, you're all children, and the adults are in the room here." Like she is literally being led by the nose by a Russian influence operation. And then it culminates with, I love this, the Russian ambassador to the United States giving to her, an otherwise anonymous congresswoman from Florida, essentially the KGB file on the JFK assassination, right? It's like, what's next? Here's what the Russians thought about Roswell, New Mexico. Let's all look over here and not talk about the war in Ukraine. It's this kind of subliterate, bargain basement, low IQ. So, and we're all kind of just falling for it. To me, it says way more about America and how Russia holds us in such low regard that they're doing these things in plain sight now. They just don't care, right? It's like whatever we can do to kind of get the base all sort of jazzed up. And, it's almost as Steve Bannon's line, flood the zone with shit, right? Yeah. The Russians are flooding the zone with shit. and talking, oh, this is all about peace. No, it's not about peace. It's about getting a war of conquest accomplished without the use of tanks and soldiers and bombs, because you've tried that and it's failed, right? You want the American president to certify your occupation, your Anschluss in Europe, right? And they're telling us this. I mean, that's the thing. They're telling us this, and we're gonna, oh, okay, well, that sounds fine,
Yeah. Well, I mean, Anna Paulina was just interested. She's just asking questions. She just wants to know a little bit more information.
Just asking questions.
Maybe the Russians will be the one that will elucidate the truth about the JFK assassination. Y'all, the headlines are chock full of news about data breaches and regulatory rollbacks that are making all of us vulnerable when it comes to our private information. But you can do something about it. Delete Me is here to make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online. Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. It sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing you what they found, where they found it, and what is removed. I'm still dealing with these fucking spam emails from the email spam attack that I got hit with a couple of months ago. Things just still pop on through no matter how much I unsubscribe for everything and hit the report spam button. But Delete Me has been easy to use as far as preventing future such attacks. Easy to sign up for. Couldn't recommend it more. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to www.joindeleteme.com/bulwark and use promo code bulwark at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to www.joindeleteme.com/bulwark and enter code bulwark at checkout. That's www.joindeleteme.com/bulwark, code bulwark. Back to the Middle East, that deal you mentioned earlier. How's the ceasefire holding up? What's the state of play?
Well, it's
in Israel?
I believe it would be called sort of precarious at the moment, or there are signs of alarm, and SS Gravely Concerned has set sail. I mean, as I mentioned, Hamas kind of crawled back out of its tunnels when the IDF pulled back and are reasserting control over the parts of Gaza that they're meant not to have control over, executing people they see as collaborators or people who have opposed them, which has certainly earned the attention and ire of Donald Trump. There was some kind of skirmish yesterday. Hamas opened fire on the IDF. The IDF bombed, killed, I think, upwards of 40 people, including, I'm sure, Hamas. It certainly seems like it's fraying at the edges there, if not falling apart. And I think the main imperative of the U.S. now is to try and get Netanyahu from going all in again. Right? That's basically what they're out there. In fact, Steve Witkoff's son, Alex Witkoff, was tweeting this just today in opposition or to contradict somebody who had said the opposite, right? And he's talking about how precarious or sort of tenuous this whole thing is. I mean, look, I didn't think this was going to hold. I kept completely quiet when it was announced, even though obviously we're all very happy the hostages were released. That was something that Israelis were demanding for a long, long time. And I will say this, and I do think it's true. And Anshel Pfeffer, who's a biographer of Netanyahu, a very good Israeli reporter, also pointed this out. Donald Trump was able to do something that I think other presidents have not been able to do, just by sheer force of will and the fact, frankly, that he has kind of got a finger in every pie here, right? He has been bribed by every Gulf regime, and his people, his envoy certainly has. If you read the reporting on, the Emiratis and the Qataris paying off basically the Witkoff clan and the Trump clan, so they're kind of on the hook. He's very close to Erdogan, the Turkish president, and was able to wield some leverage there to get him to put pressure on Hamas. And of course, I think, nobody can claim that he hasn't had Israel's back. I mean, bombing Iran was the first time in American history that the United States joined Israel in an active military campaign in the Middle East, right? So he's basically done what Netanyahu has wanted. So he was able to use that to his advantage to say, now you have to do this, right? So, okay, I can give him credit for that. But then when he comes home and says, peace in our time.
Besides the corruption part. Yeah,
right,
we can give
mission
him credit
accomplished. Besides the corruption part. But peace in our time, sort of ticker tape parade, I deserve a Nobel. Not only is it too soon to tell, but there are a lot of indicators that that was never, ever going to be the case, that this was not going to hold. Now he's saying he's got a list of Arab regimes that are ready to send troops into Gaza to go after Hamas. I would love to see this list, and I would love to see these Arab countries basically say that they're about to do this, right? Because time was, it was going to be a coalition of European Western countries that were going to go in and, turn Gaza into beachfront property. It was going to be the next Miami Beach, right? Color me skeptical that peace is going to break out in the Middle East. I spent a long time dealing with this region and studying it, but unfortunately, and here I have to be critical of my own so-called profession. I think the way the media frame this kind of unprecedented historic thing, only put wind in his sails and gave him this kind of inspiration to think, I can just wave my magic wand on Ukraine, Russia, and make that go away too. Yeah. And we are where we are now as a result of this.
Speaking about hand in pies, there's one other pie over there he's got his hand in you didn't mention, and that is Saudi Arabia. MBS will be coming to America. No word on whether Candace is going to undertake, what I've been hoping that she would, the transvestigation into him. I want her to expand into the Middle East. She's looking into European leaders and whether they might be trans. And I'm kind of intrigued.
Is MBS said to be trans?
There have been some scuttlebutt about intersex with MBS, but I don't know anything. And I wouldn't want to say that publicly, but I'm hoping that encouraging Candace to look into the possibility of intersex versus micropenis.
I could see Louis C.K.'s next stand-up act right now in Riyadh here. If this is true, I mean, come on.
It's same. So anyway, he'll be at the White House November 18th, which is, I don't even know really what more to say about this. We've all known this, but at this point, he's just completely welcomed into the community of nations and Western nations, and the murdering of journalists and other things don't matter anymore.
Well, no, he's got Kushner on WhatsApp. I mean, this is how deals are getting done in the region, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence. Kushner and Witkoff were on 60 Minutes last weekend. They're the ones that kind of orchestrate this. And what kind of financial schemes are happening in the background? I mean, Kushner in bed with the Saudis for what's the video game company that I think they're acquiring or purchase? It's just, again, it's all bakshish, which leads to some kind of diplomatic breakthrough. But if it's leveraged on corruption, you can be sure that the longevity of these things is only as good as the corruption is maintained, right? We're not having treaties signed. We're not having actual facts on the ground change necessarily. I mean, yes, the release of hostages, I'm not trying to diminish that. That's an extraordinary thing, and it should have happened a long time ago. But, who is going to keep Gaza from descending back into chaos?
Tony Blair and MBS. Yeah, Tony Blair and MBS. MBS will get an F1 track, and Tony Blair will have a fiefdom of some kind. And who knows?
Yeah. And I mean, look, I will say this. One of the things that I think the achievement of the Abraham Accords elided, and it's a good thing when countries normalize with a country they have been at states of war with or don't recognize has a right to exist, right? And generally, I think that's a good thing. However, the forfeiture of the importance of a Palestinian state, which was kind of eclipsed by the Abraham Accords, I always thought this is going to be a problem in the future. And it will continue to be a problem. You can't sort of bribe and blackmail and sort of, engage in acts of corruption to get out of a stateless people in the region, a cause for which, has been a galvanizing one for innumerable countries and now a cause that has galvanized the American population to such a degree that support for Israel has not collapsed, but certainly been lowered to a degree that is unprecedented. That's going to have to be addressed at some point. And it's not about building hotels, along the Gaza seashore, right? There's going to have to be an actual state in place, and the Israelis don't want to do that now for reasons that I think everybody can understand, which is the trauma of October 7th, right? This is going to be multi-generational, the idea, foreclosing on the idea that we can ever trust the Palestinians to have a state, because it will happen to us again. So these are very thorny questions I don't see many answers for, but I do see a lot of pageantry and a lot of, headlines being written as though everything is okay now. It's not.
Really quick, in our hemisphere, before I let you go, I'm just curious your thoughts on the state of play with regards to potentially our regime change war in Venezuela and the fact that we're just like randomly yeeting boats out of the Caribbean. The Colombian president has said that we killed a Colombian fisherman. There's been some conversations about whether some of these people on the boats are from Trinidad. Two of them survived, and unlike how you would treat an enemy combatant or the deadliest drug traffickers in the world, as the administration has claimed that these people are. We've just returned them, repatriated them to Venezuela. I had an email this morning from somebody who's had some experience in this world, saying like the drivers of these boats, like it's not like all the gang all gets on the boat together. It's like, it's usually like there may be a cartel member on the boat, but there's also, some local person that they hired, paid a couple $100, a local fisherman, local boat, right? And so, what we're doing is pretty crazy, just in the micro with the bombing of the boats, but also like what the plan is for Venezuela also remains a little unclear to me. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Little Marco gets his Bay of Pigs, and baby, he's earned it. I read in the Wall Street Journal today that there had been some debate about his ongoing rivalry with Rick Grinnell, he of the Kennedy Center and its anti-woke arts programming, who was running point with Maduro, trying to come up with a diplomatic solution for this furor with Venezuela, which has been longstanding. But it seems like Rubio has won that debate, and he's running point on all Western Hem stuff, right? Maduro's a dictator. He stole the last election. I think he is illegitimate. I am also extremely, extremely skeptical and wary of the use of American covert action, particularly in this hemisphere, because, well, you can open a history book and read all about it, but it doesn't usually go well. And the indicators are that we're sort of creeping up to this point, right? B-52 bombers as a show of force, and also, collection. CIA has been sort of activated to do things that we'll probably read about in the New York Times in 6 months or a year. I don't know what the end game here is. Is it, well, obviously it's regime change, or getting Maduro out and allowing, an actual democratic state to emerge. But how is the United States aiming to do this? And how many ways can this go sideways? I'm not sure. I don't have much clarity on that. But the fact that Rubio, that his currency has gone up is interesting. I mean, this was sort of the neocon candidate in the primary in 2016.
Yeah. Well, he did not get, this is worth reminding people, he did not get the VP slot. I mean, maybe there are other reasons, but one of the reasons he did not get the VP slot is because Tucker Carlson told Trump that if he picked Rubio as VP, the deep state would kill him because Rubio was a deep state neocon operative. That's what Tucker told Trump, and Tucker told Donald Trump Jr. And I mean, I can't get in Donald Trump's addled brain, but apparently, based on reporting, that word of caution is part of the reason why it's J.D. Vance and not Marco. And so it's pretty notable that he now is like controlling big parts of the foreign policy. So I don't know, maybe there is something to this deep state conspiracy.
I mean, Rick Grinnell is sort of like failed theater kid, angry Fox News.
Yeah. Well, Rick Grinnell is just incompetent. And the Rick Grinnell thing is not
he's a buffoon. He's a buffoon.
Yeah, and he's also really unpleasant to be around. So I think that's probably less about ideology and just more like, I don't want this person
personality,
in my meetings.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is Rubio gets to sort of assert his worldview without pissing on the cornflakes of people like J.D. Vance or other sort of invested ideologues in this administration who come from an isolationist background, right?
Yeah.
Or at least not yet. We don't know what the sort of the happening behind closed doors, but the reporting suggests that he and Vance are kind of okay with each other for now, until there's a power struggle post-Trump. I will say the Ukrainians are much, much happier, and I am much, much happier to have Rubio run point on the war than Witkoff.
Sure.
Or certainly J.D. Vance.
Low bar.
It's a low bar, but, remember, Rubio in the U.S. Senate for 14 years was a Russia hawk, right?
Right. Yeah.
When we did our investigation into Havana syndrome, that's not a segue, by the way, I'm just mentioning it as a data point. He wrote a letter, co-signed a letter with a handful of other U.S. senators, basically saying this shows that there is credible evidence, and the IC has been, obfuscating about this anomalous health incidents, and we should get to the bottom of it. And wink, wink, we know that Russia's behind it. So Rubio is not a babe in the woods when it comes to Putin or Kremlin designs on Europe, NATO, and the rest of it. And indeed, I mean, if he's having these kind of tete-a-tetes with Lavrov and they're going sideways very quickly, that suggests that he's sticking to his mettle. Publicly, of course, he espouses the Trumpian view that we all want peace and all the rest of it. But privately, who knows what he's doing? But that said, the Western Hem thing is kind of fascinating. I mean, we have at least outwardly said that we are now kind of, it's this sort of grand American recessional, right? We're pulling out of the world. We're not pulling out of Europe entirely, but more or less telling them they're on their own and we might not be there to have their back should they find themselves at war with who. And it's all about kind of, consolidating our turf in a 19th century kind of way. And I think for him, this is a great opportunity. I mean, he's the son of Cuban exiles, makes no mystery about what he'd like to see happen in Cuba and some of these other left-wing autocratic regimes in South America. So I think he's sinking his teeth into it as best he can. And Trump is all for it because going after narco-terrorists is part of the MAGA mission, right? Keep the drugs out, keep migrants out. So I think Rubio's managed to kind of thread that needle. A foreign policy that is grounded in a kind of domestic urgency.
Michael Weiss, I went long. There have been more drips and drabs on the Havana syndrome in your reporting. We'll do it next time that you're with us, and I'll put a link to that latest Wall Street Journal piece on it. And folks can go back to your last time here. We kind of talked about that. But before I lose you, I must ask you took your daughter to her first concert as Chapel Roan, and I want to know what not your daughter, I want to know what Michael Weiss's favorite Chapel Roan song was.
My Kink is Karma by a mile. And that was the best. But that was the best performance she did all night. That song, "My Kink is Karma." Yeah, it's a great song. Yeah. It's very
appropriate
hooky.
For you.
Well, I mean, it's about Schadenfreude. I mean, it's romantic Schadenfreude, but believe you me, I experience Schadenfreude on a daily basis. I just opened my Twitter feed, so my kink is karma too. I guess you could say. No, it's a great show. But I have to emphasize this: it was not the show where she denounced ICE. It was the day afterward. So before I get the trolls coming after me for certifying this.
We do ICE denunciations here, so it's okay.
Okay, yeah. But Julia, my kid, it was her first concert ever, and she loved it, so it was well worth it.
I love that. All right. I appreciate you, my man. We'll be talking to you again soon, all right?
Yep, you got it.